There's a quiet panic spreading through the walls of global finance, and it's not retail investors or crypto traders causing it. It's the banks. Because for the first time in decades, they're watching a system take shape that doesn't need them. A network that moves value faster than they can blink, cheaper than they can charge, and smarter than their regulations can contain. The world's financial infrastructure is evolving in real time, and XRP is sitting right in the middle of that transformation. This isn't financial advice, it's research, it's data, and it's the story they hoped you wouldn't notice. If you're ready to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface, hit that like button, subscribe to Matrix Millionaire, and drop a comment below before the end of this video. It helps more than you know. Now let's look around for a second. Inflation is crushing the average person. The more money they print, the less it's worth. People feel it in their groceries, in their rent, in their gas. The cost of living keeps climbing while savings accounts barely move. The system is broken, not by accident but by design. The banks are built to profit from friction, from the delays and the inefficiencies they created. That's what XRP threatens to erase. The old monetary rails, SWIFT, Fedwire, ACH, were never meant for real-time liquidity. They were built for control. Every transaction flows through a maze of intermediaries, compliance layers, and settlement delays. That's why cross-border payments take 3 to 5 business days. That's why remittances cost $30 to send. But XRP rewrote those rules. With one ledger, one token, and one line of code, value can now move across the planet in 3 to 5 seconds. Banks know this isn't just competition, it's extinction-level innovation. And that's why they're panicking. You're watching major banking lobbies, the ICBA, the BPI, representing more than 5,000 institutions, formally object to Ripple's banking license. Think about that for a second. Why would the most powerful financial players in the world go to war over a single company's charter? Because they know what's coming. Ripple isn't trying to play inside their system, it's quietly rebuilding it. For years, they told us crypto was a threat to stability, that it was speculative, volatile, unregulated. But behind closed doors, the banks were running pilots with RippleNet, testing cross-border corridors, and using the same tech they claimed to fear. The difference is, now the tables are turning. Regulators are finally giving green lights for digital custody, and the old guard can feel the walls closing in. The truth is simple. Banks make billions by moving money slowly. Ripple's technology makes that entire business model obsolete. Once on-demand liquidity becomes standard, once tokenized settlements become the norm, the entire financial stack gets compressed into a single digital layer. No more waiting, no more hidden fees, no more middlemen. That's what terrifies them. Because they know what happens when the world realizes that XRP doesn't just move money, it moves power. Power away from centralized gatekeepers and toward a programmable, borderless network that doesn't ask permission. This is the moment everything flips. And here's what they're not saying out loud. Banks are already integrated into pilot programs that use the same core architecture Ripple built years ago. They're testing tokenized treasuries, on-chain FX settlements, and cross-border rails that settle through the same mechanics as the XRP ledger. They can't admit it publicly because doing so would expose the real story. They're not fighting crypto anymore. They're preparing for it. The banks aren't worried about competition. They're worried about irrelevance. They see what happens when value becomes liquid, instant, and programmable. They see governments exploring CBDCs that run on Ripple's rails. They see a future where settlement happens on ledgers, not through ledgers. And every time they file another objection or stall another regulation, it's not resistance. It's panic disguised as policy. If you're still watching, you already know what that means. You're early. You're watching history bend in real time. The same institutions that built the old system are now scrambling to survive the new one. And XRP, the very asset they mocked, sued, and tried to silence, is becoming the backbone of a financial architecture they can no longer control. So buckle up, because the panic you're seeing isn't the end of crypto. It's the beginning of the reset. The banks are worried for a reason, and before long, the world will understand why. The deeper you dig into this, the picture becomes impossible to ignore. The banks aren't fighting crypto because they think it will fail. They're resisting because they know it's already working. Liquidity is leaving their system quietly, one transaction at a time, and flowing into networks they don't control. Behind the headlines, regulators are flipping their tone. The same agencies that once labeled crypto a threat, the OCC, the FDIC, even the Federal Reserve, are now approving custody, trading, and settlement for digital assets. It's no longer about banning blockchain. It's about integrating it before it leaves them behind. That's where XRP enters the center of the storm. Ripple's on-demand liquidity was never built for speculation. It was built for movement, fast, borderless, and compliant. What started as cross-border remittance corridors between Mexico and the Philippines has now evolved into the blueprint for tokenized settlement at scale. And here's where you can actually see the shift forming in real time, on MEXC. I always mention it for one reason. MEXC's XRP USDT pair shows institutional activity before it reaches mainstream data. Every time that order book depth spikes or volume surges days before a major price move, that's not retail noise, that's structured liquidity positioning. If you study those patterns long enough, you start to see how early flow builds weeks before announcements, partnerships, or regulatory events even hit the news. It's the tell before the story breaks. So while banking lobbies like the ICBA and BPI are publicly filing objections against Ripple's trust charter, their internal research desks are studying the same data retail investors dismiss as coincidence. They understand that this isn't about another token or a speculative cycle, it's about liquidity migration. The flow is shifting from a delayed, permissioned network to one that's programmable and immediate. Think about what happens when a financial system built on delay collides with one built on instant settlement. The concept of float disappears. Overnight transfers, correspondent banks, 3-day settlement windows, gone. Every second becomes an opportunity cost. XRP compresses that time down to almost zero, and that's what terrifies them. Not because they're losing relevance overnight, but because the world is learning to live without waiting for them. And make no mistake, they're adapting behind the scenes. Banks are hiring blockchain compliance officers. Payment giants are quietly joining pilot programs that use Ripple's architecture for internal liquidity. The irony is thick. The same technology they dismissed is now the one they're depending on to survive. What's unfolding isn't panic in the traditional sense. It's the recognition of an irreversible shift. Every objection they file, every public statement they issue, is an attempt to slow down what's already moving too fast to stop. But the rails are live, the liquidity is awake, and XRP, the asset they once called useless, is becoming the settlement layer of a new financial era. So when you see them doubling down on fear, don't mistake it for strength. It's strategy. Delay is the last weapon of an obsolete system. But the truth is visible now, in the markets, on the ledgers, and in the data we watch every single day. Keep your eyes on the flow, because while they write memos, liquidity doesn't wait. It moves. We've entered the point of no return. The financial architecture that ruled the 20th century is quietly being rebuilt in real time. And for the first time, it's not the banks leading the change, it's the technology underneath them. Look at the timing. Central banks from Europe to Asia are testing digital settlement frameworks that mirror Ripple's architecture almost line for line. Governments talk about inclusion and modernization, but what they're really building is a unified liquidity layer, programmable money moving across instant settlement networks. And who's sitting in the middle of every conversation, pilot, and proof of concept? Ripple. The same company that the old system tried to bury is now writing the software the new system will use. The European Central Bank's digital euro pilot, the Monetary Authority of Singapore's cross-border testing, the Bank of England's project for wholesale settlements, they're all building the same core structure: instant value exchange, real-time validation, and multi-asset interoperability. Those aren't just buzzwords. They're descriptions of how the XRP ledger already functions. And here's the twist that few realize. When those central bank networks go live, they'll need liquidity bridges to connect their currencies, their stablecoins, and their tokenized bonds. That bridge already exists. It's XRP. That's not hype. It's plumbing. Meanwhile, in the open market, liquidity tells the story before policy does. While mainstream traders watch headlines, early flow keeps lighting up the same data points. MEXC's XRP pairs continue to show bursts of volume right before new corridor announcements or regulatory filings. Those spikes are signals. They're the quiet hands of capital moving ahead of confirmation. Institutions don't wait for press releases. They position where the rails are being built. That's why keeping one eye on MEXC isn't about trading hype. It's about reading liquidity behavior. When you see those deep order book builds and sudden surges in open interest, it's the clearest sign that the network's next expansion phase is already underway. The movement starts in data before it becomes reality. Every major technological revolution follows the same pattern. First, denial, then resistance, then adoption masked as innovation. That's exactly where we are right now. The banks are rebranding their fear as modernization initiatives. Regulators are rewriting definitions to make it sound like they're leading the way. But the truth is, the network has already evolved beyond them. Money isn't paper anymore. It's data, and data moves at the speed of trust. XRP provides that trust, mathematically, cryptographically, globally. When people say this is about decentralization, what they're really describing is independence from delay, independence from permission. The moment you remove that friction, the world's value system starts breathing differently. So while legacy institutions write reports about blockchain adoption, the rest of us are watching it happen. Each new corridor, each liquidity pool, each integration into banking APIs is another nail in the coffin of the old rails. It's no longer a question of if the system flips, it's a countdown to when. If you're still watching, you're part of that shift. You've already crossed the line from spectator to participant, because once you understand what's happening, the flow, the data, the coordination, you can't unsee it. The world's money is migrating to speed, and XRP is the engine underneath it. This isn't about panic anymore. It's about inevitability. What's coming next isn't a bull run. It's a realignment. The rails of global money are being rebuilt, and XRP is the code holding the system together. The banks can file, stall, and spin the story, but they can't stop the flow. The architecture is live, the liquidity is awake, and the bridge has already been built. If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe to Matrix Millionaire, and comment ignition below so I know you stayed till the end. The future isn't being predicted, it's already in motion, and XRP is what's moving it.